Hello, everybody. This is Elena Love, the host of the Pure Joy podcast, and I'm here today with Edward Miller. Hello, Edward.
Hello, how are you today?
I'm so good. Welcome to the show. I'm
Thank
glad.
you for the invitation.
Yeah. So today I want to introduce you and also your program, which is called the SoulTranSync program. And
Yes,
I'm going to read a little intro about it so people listening can kind of get an idea of what we're going to be talking about today. So the SoulTranSync programs will bring greater awareness to your truth, revealing your divine nature. They will enable you to realign thinking, inspiring true happiness, enthusiasm, and peacefulness. The
yes,
SoulTranSync practices personally empower you by creating a direct connection with your own self or true self. By
yes,
deepening your awareness, you'll be able to take full ownership of the feelings attached to all of your life experiences and then intentionally release them through forgiveness.
yes.
Yes, I love this. When I actually read about you before we scheduled this podcast, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just right up my alley. I'm so into all of this. So I'm really excited about hearing about like how you got into this, what, all of it. So would you like to jump in and tell us?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to thank you for inviting me to be on the show. I'm very much looking for, I love talking about SoulTranSync. Um, I developed SoulTranSync about 12 years ago. I was listening to a Joe Vitale. I don't know if you know who Joe Vitale is. He's a marketing guy, but he was talking about the movie The Secret, and he was talking about this concept called the missing secret. And the missing secret was our internal resistance to life. Whatever we're resisting is what we're going to continue to see more of. So in that audio that I was watching of his, he was talking about a practice called Ho'oponopono, which
Mhm.
I fell in love with. And it changed my life. At that moment, it changed my life because it seemed to make so much sense. So at that point, I started studying more about Ho'oponopono, trying to understand the concept of it, directing it into my heart. I think I've drilled the whole mantra of it into my heart. So now it's part of my natural self-talk. And I think that's important with the Ho'oponopono practice, that it is a practice that you drill into your conscious mind, your subconscious mind, so it becomes part of your natural way of being.
Yeah, now I want to talk a little bit about that because I've known about Ho'oponopono for years and I've actually like said the words, but when I listened to your meditation, I did the heart-centered journey, which
Oh,
is,
good.
and I think it's like 15 minutes, 16 minute, and I loved it. And I mean, there's so many things I want to talk to you about, but the binaural beats, which really calmed my mind, but then also the way that you did the Ho'oponopono. And like, I would love for you to talk about how to apply it. Cause a lot of people think you're saying sorry to someone like, oh, I'm
Well,
sorry.
let me tell you,
Yeah.
let me explain to you about what Ho'oponopono is first. I don't know if any of your audience knows. Ho'oponopono is an ancient Hawaiian forgiveness practice. It's a form of mediation that was done in Hawaii for hundreds of years. But essentially what it is, it's a mantra with a philosophy attached to it. And the mantra is, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. Now, the philosophy of Ho'oponopono is that there is no one but you. And that in reciting that mantra, you're reciting it to your own soul. You're connecting that level of forgiveness and appreciation and love to yourself. It's a beautiful way of working on inner child work because you learn to develop a softer, more loving, more intimate way of relating to your inner child. So, as I said, when I first started learning about the Ho'oponopono mantra, I was just blown away by it because I really got intrigued with the idea of entrenching a new self-talk into my consciousness. Because like everybody else, there's a lot of things I was in the past very judgmental and critical about myself. I was my own worst enemy. I never felt I had accomplished or done enough. I was very much centered on how inadequate I was. And it had become my habit. It became my natural way of relating to myself. And you know what? At some level, I thought it was funny. When people say dishonoring things about themselves to themselves, and then they laugh about it. Well, I was that guy. And I didn't realize how harmful that was. I thought it was just, a way of relating to yourself. But I realized that all I was doing was punishing myself every time I related to myself. I was always in contention with how to honor myself. So the Ho'oponopono meant a way of maybe establishing a relationship with myself in a brand new way. And that's why when I started doing the mantra, I wanted to do it in a little different way than I had read about and heard about. I decided to take it into meditation. I'd always been a real meditator, and I'd been a student of Transcendental Meditation for a long time. I studied many Buddhist meditation practices, but I wanted something that would allow me to get into my subconscious mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I know how suggestive our subconscious minds are. So when I was able to find myself in a theta state, into a deeper meditation state, I was then able to reprogram my self-talk with, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. The miracle of Ho'oponopono is that you're not clearing anything in particular. You're not trying to clear any thought in particular. You're just changing your relationship with yourself. So whenever you're feeling in resistance, whenever you're believing a thought that's not true and can't be true, whenever you're caught up in some disruptive energy, just maybe feeling traffic might be annoying you, go right to that mantra. Go right to that, I'm sorry, I love you, please forgive me, thank you, and feel it. Now, one of the good things about the practice is that the more you practice, the more you have a visceral experience with the mantra. You know, when I say it now, my heart opens up because I feel the love and appreciation and kindness that I'm giving to myself, which I knew nothing how to do through most of my life. I had no idea how to be kind to me. But the Ho'oponopono mantra made me very conscious of that. You know, you can't be professing love to yourself when you're believing all kinds of things about yourself that are negative. You know, so it really was a big change for me.
You know, and then that relates to other people. Like, you know, we hear people say, how can you truly love someone else if you don't love yourself? So
absolutely,
you really have to start there. And then I love the whole, like, incorporating it into a mantra so that it's not just something you're just saying, but like in a deep state of meditation where you've gotten your brain like in sync to really like accept it into your heart.
Yeah, I say, let the mantra wash over you. Let the energy of the mantra wash over you. And when you, at first, when people start doing Ho'oponopono, they feel at first it feels a little fake. Who am I saying this to?
Yeah.
Who do I love? You know, who am I apologizing to? It's a real odd, and it is. And it didn't feel that odd for me, but I can understand, I can relate to that. But everybody who sticks with it, everybody that tries our meditation, but you don't need our meditation. Meditations are great because they take you into the deep. But if you just, you know, take time every day when you're sitting in your car before you get out to work, when you're about to get up in the morning, you could just take a moment and connect with that self and remember who's important, who you love, who's important to you. And that's yourself. That's that little child that, all of us have a child that was wounded. But when you can go in and re-nurture that child and reconnect with that child in a loving way, it changes your whole point of view. It just does.
Exactly. It's like the perfect way to start your day too. Yeah.
It's a beautiful prayer. It's so easy too. There's nothing much to remember.
Right. It's four lines.
Yeah. Nothing much to remember.
I mean, so I would love to talk to you a little bit more about the different types of meditations that you have, because you have, like, on your website, you have 7 of them. And one is that heart-centered journey that I did. And I loved that. And then you have the loving your inner child.
That's the big one. That's the big one.
Which one? The loving your inner child. Yeah.
Yes. We are stuck in the place we were wounded at as a child. We're stuck there. Now, not to say that we don't have our mature adult perspectives and we haven't grown up in many ways, but often we are still, our original wounds are still tender, are still vulnerable. So when you're able to reconnect with your innocent self in a very deliberate way, it is heart expanding. So the meditation, the exploring your inner child meditation that I sell, it teaches you to kind of first make what I call first contact with your inner child. And that's just imagining a scenario when you're seeing your inner child somewhere in the room with you and you invite him over and you start a dialogue with him. Okay. And it's just a love story. It's a love story of how to reconnect with that child that's already you, that's who you are too. Yeah. You know, we're that wounded person. We're the same thing we were when we came out of the womb. We're still part of that evolution. And many of the things when we're young that wound us, that affect us when we're young and we're not mentally capable of really understanding what's going on, they stay in our body. Those disappointments, those betrayals, those feelings of abandonment, they stay in that child body. And we grow up and we become mature and smart, but we still, at some level, are bearing those things, and they pop up all the time.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is that popping up is the gift. We look at that, when it pops up, we're like, oh, what is that again? But really, it's a new opportunity.
Yeah.
So the Ho'oponopono is a perfect tool for allowing whatever comes up, a thought, a memory, a energy, and we just love on it. We thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And what will happen with Ho'oponopono, which is really interesting, is that the more you do it, the more you're allowing your soul to be nurtured in this deliberate way. It appears as though there's a transformation in your point of view. All of a sudden, things that were seen to be traumatic and painful before, all of a sudden they look different to you. They feel different to you. And to be honest with you, sometimes you forget they ever happened. You know, I've been asked to remember traumas, and I can't quite put my hands on it anymore. Not that they didn't, not that, you know, they didn't exist. It's just that my mind has released them. I'm not clinging to them anymore in memory in order to entertain myself with my wound. You know, now I'm like, it wasn't real. It's not real now. Let me let it go. Thank you.
Yeah. Let me rewrite that story, basically.
Yes, I've rewritten. That's it. I've rewritten the story of myself.
Yeah, I've definitely done that. Like I've noticed.
Let me show you one thing also. I got to show you one thing. I got to show. Hold on. Let me show it to you. How do you do this? Now.
You're asking me.
I want you to see. You can't really see it. Well, this, you see that little boy? Can you see him?
Oh, kind of. There's a lot of stuff on the
I know, a lot of apps in front of him. I don't know how to get rid of the apps. That's me as a little boy.
Awesome.
And what I do is I recommend all my clients put a picture of yourself as a child on your phone so that you can remember and connect with that child regularly.
Yes.
It's a very beautiful way, you know, to reconnect with yourself all the time in your innocence.
I love that. And I love the whole thing of getting into that child, because I always think about that. Like when you hear someone self-deprecating, or even like I noticed in your meditation, you have, I remember to remember, as opposed to don't forget.
To remember,
like,
yes.
Conscious language is so important. And like to think about how would you speak to a child? Like when you hear someone talking to themselves really poorly, or even when we do it, like, even though I feel like I'm aware in a lot of ways, sometimes I'm like, why am I saying this to myself? Just because I gained a couple of pounds or whatever. Like, you know, just to remember, like, act as if you're talking to your child, and what a difference that would make.
Yeah, but you know what I really think is interesting? You brought up something interesting. Sometimes it's just a bad habit. Sometimes it's a bad habit. We're so used to demeaning ourselves, it's become entertaining for us. So we just kind of do it. You know, oh, you know, I'm so fat. Oh, you know, I'm not smart enough. Oh, you know what I mean? Oh, you know, I'm going to be, it's going to fall apart anyway. It's just you know, we're used to that. So we identify with it so quickly, even though it's something we wouldn't do to a child that we loved. We take it and we do it to ourselves.
Yeah. It's so interesting. So once people start, like, let's say you start doing the inner child, loving your inner child meditation, like, I know you work with clients, like how long does it take generally for people to start to really notice results?
You can notice results after the first meditation. You know, very often when I take people through inner child work, it opens their whole new way of looking at themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I call it first contact. Most people have never connected with their inner child. They don't know it exists. They disregard it. When it acts a fool, they want to dismiss it. You know, your inner child just wants to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
So when it starts to express itself, our general behavior is to suppress it or disidentify with it, but not to allow it and listen to it and understand what it feels. And once you start to allow yourself to reconnect with that innocent part of you, you know, when I was a little boy and, you know, I was at baseball practice and I was never picked to play the game, and I was always waiting to play, and I was always waiting for them to call my name, and I continued to, it was so humiliating and so, hard on me. That is a wound. Now, it may not be the worst wound in the world, but it is going to come up in your life. Not being enough, being disregarded, being not, all those kinds of things are going to continue to show up, because when you were a little kid and you were bearing that so intensely and weren't mature enough to know how to handle it, it stays in our bodies,
right,
ready to be reconnected with ourselves and allowed to be released.
Right. And then so we come up with like a phrase, like a lot of people have like I'm not lovable, or I'm not good enough. So does this address that? Like,
Yes.
if people are
You know what? You
self-sabotage.
asked me a question. I'm going to give you a little better answer. I believe that probably after a couple of weeks of a daily reprogramming, reconnecting with your innocence, you will start to see things different, see yourself differently. You will start seeing you'll start being more compassionate with yourself when you're feeling a little out there, when you're feeling a little awkward, when you're feeling unappreciated. You're going to start to say, oh, okay, I'm just this is what I'm feeling now.
Yeah.
I'm not wrong, and it's not wrong to feel this way. And
So
once you start to
yeah.
even respond to yourself in a more loving way, energy moves. The energy that was keeping you caught in a story of dissatisfaction and inadequacy, all of a sudden opens up with that love.
Yeah. And I think that's something that's missing so much in like a lot of programs. Like I lead programs, people, change their and they, transform their life. But I think the piece that, and we do recommend meditation, but a lot of people are like, I can't meditate, or it needs to be something that really keeps them doing it. Because like you said, like if you're constantly self-sabotaging, you could lose all the weight in the world, but you're just going to go back to it.
Absolutely.
So like this piece is really important to me, and that's why I was excited to talk to you. And then in combination with, like, I noticed when I sat and did this, like there's a stillness that I got that I don't always get from a lot of other guided meditations. And I know like it's the words, but it also has to do with that we're in theta, right? With the binaural.
Yes. What I do, and when I build these meditations, I allow people I use binaural and isochronic brain waves in my meditations. So you can't really hear them, but they do help you to slow your mind down into the theta state. And once you're in theta state, you're actually more receptive to suggestion, because that's the same state as a hypnotic state. So you're more receptive to receiving things new.
Yes.
So that's where you program this new way of talking to yourself. In the deep. I call it in the deep.
Okay. Can you just talk, just for people that don't know about it, a little bit more about like how the binaural beats works, and then like the state of theta?
Well, there are two kind of binaural beats. There's isochronic and there's binaural. Binaural is set up where you have earphones on. Binaural works, you need to have earphones. And you're listening to a tone, but there are different tones coming out of into different ears. So as a result, in the middle of your brain, it resonates at a frequency. Now that's binaural. Isochronic is a beat. That beat, once it changes frequency, it can send you automatically into that theta state also. So my meditations have both binaural and isochronic brainwave in them.
Okay.
And they allow you to go past your beta state, which is right now you and I are in beta, through alpha, which is a more relaxed state of mind, into theta. Generally, to get to a theta state, it could take 8 minutes, 7-8 minutes. I can get there now, right this minute, but most people aren't able to get there because it takes practice. Now, I want to get to this point you were making before about people not wanting to meditate. That's okay. You know what? There's other things, the ways you can slow down your mind. You could go fishing. You could sit on your patio. Anytime you're just allowing your mind to settle and allow your heart to be open, it's a great time to do the mantra. You're not in your thinking mind anymore. You're not in your beta state. You may be falling into your alpha mind, which is an open-hearted state. And that's a place to just be kind to yourself and be aware of some of the things that you're feeling, some of the stories that you're holding on to. Just in those quiet moments, But if you can't meditate, and I have a lot of clients, I just can't do it. You can have quiet moments, and not 2 minutes. I'm talking, you give yourself a half-hour quiet moment a day.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to have TV all the time.
You don't have to constantly be entertained.
No, you don't. The mind is beautiful as it settles.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is your mind settles, your heart opens up.
It's so true. Like
Yeah.
when you get out of that thinking state. Yeah.
Yes.
So like I always recommend to people to have like a certain place that you are going to be meditating, that you sit. Like, how do you have people set up like for success as far as like if they are going to start listening to some of these meditations?
Well, you know, it's interesting. You're asking a very interesting question, because that's because I teach meditation. That's one of my greatest challenges, telling people they have 5 minutes a day. People don't believe they have 5 minutes a day. They just don't believe it. It's like, oh no, when can I do this? You have a moment when you wake up in the morning where you go find a seat and give that to yourself. You have a moment in the middle of the day when things, right before you have lunch or right before you go back to your desk, you can give yourself 5 minutes there. Giving yourself time is a deliberate, intentional thing.
Yes.
Either you can never find it, or you can constantly be giving it to yourself. And
you know, that comes back to worthiness, right? Like, so
yes,
that haven't learned this yet are the ones that are like, I don't have time. But then once you're doing it, you're like, oh my God, this is so
you can't live without it. Exactly.
And that's, I mean, there's a guru saying the student comes to him and says, I don't have time to meditate. And it says something like, I can't meditate for 10 minutes. And then he says, okay, your assignment's to meditate for an hour. Like, you know, because obviously that's the problem, is that people think they don't have time for things. But guess what? They find time to lay on the couch and watch a movie.
They do, they do. I started meditating when I was about 28 years old, and I trained with Transcendental Meditation. Do you know anything about Transcendental?
You know, I've heard of it. I know it's expensive and it involves a mantra. That's what I know.
I was about to say something that wasn't very nice, but I'm going to say it. Transcendental meditation, because the way it's taught, it can be too much for people, because they expect you to do it twice a day. You do it for 20 minutes twice a day, and that's the practice. That's what Transcendental Meditation is. And you're doing it with a mantra that they give you after you've had training. So they whisper in, no, I'm not supposed to tell you all these things, but I'm gonna tell you anyway. They whisper in your ear what your mantra is. And that's the mantra you have for the rest of your life. Yeah. So I used my mantra for at least 10 years. But meditation, it felt like there was more for me to get from it. And that's when I started studying Buddhist meditation. Buddhist meditation is wonderful. They call it mindfulness now, but it's wonderful. There's so many tools and resources in Buddhist meditation. People think Buddhist meditation is mindfulness, but there's lots of different practices in Buddhist meditation.
Yeah, I'm sure. Can you give us an example of like?
Well, Buddhist meditation you go into the deep, you go into the quiet space, and then you start affirming, very much like the Ho'oponopono, but you have a dialogue often with yourself about loving, being compassionate, being available, understanding your feelings. Buddhist meditation is beautiful because it teaches you to allow your feelings, respect them, and to express them. Express them and don't judge them. Most of the time we're judging our feelings. We're saying, I don't want to feel that. Or that's not right to feel that way. If that's what you feel, that's the only truth in that moment, how you feel. So I'm a person who believes in express it. It doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to be how you feel all the time. But in this moment, it's important to allow that whatever that emotion is or whatever that feelings that you have, express them. And that's why it's important to have the right kind of relationships, because you can't have relationships where you can't tell people how you're feeling.
Right. People
need to be interested, not to take on their feelings, but at least allow an empathetic ear to allow you to express where you're at in that moment and not to take it personally.
And you know, that happens a lot as people, what I call awaken spiritually. So people start to awaken to their own awareness and their own consciousness. And again, like friendships tend to either you find new ones and other ones fall away because you finally realize what's important. And I think what you just said is one of the most, like that's the top thing in relationships that I attract, friendships or otherwise, is are they able to hear me without things blowing up or vice versa?
Or defining you.
Yeah.
She's like that.
Right.
Yeah, that's not a friend.
No, and people change like on the daily, especially these days with everything going on. Like, I saw you last week, but let's find out where you're at
Exactly.
now.
I hear you.
So I think the best gift that we can give someone is letting them be brand new and
Yeah.
kind of
But the
relate.
real gift is allowing them to teach them how to express their feelings. You know, most men love to tell you stories about what they're feeling, but they can't tell you what they're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've noticed that.
I have.
You know, I'm feeling disregarded. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling displaced. I'm feeling sad. Men don't say things like that. They'll tell you a story about what happened and who did this and how, you know, but we have to get to a place. If you want if you want to move energy that you're stuck in, you've got to express it.
Yeah.
You've got to express, you got to know the language to say what you're feeling. I really believe that.
Right.
Not make what you feel wrong in any way at all.
I like that. And so do you teach that as well? Like,
yes.
Not just communication.
Yeah. I do a lot of allowing people to understand, you know, you got to teach people to talk about their feelings. People are so not used to it. You know what I mean? Especially men. Men are like, oh no, what do you want to hear? You know, I said, well, how does that feel? You ask somebody how something feels, and they tell you a story.
Uh-huh.
I said, well, how does it feel? And then they tell you another story. So I said, okay, well, you're not answering my question. And then they, what do you want to know? I said, I want to know how that makes you feel. And they said, well, it makes me feel mad. I said, oh, so there we go. Yeah, that's right. It made you feel mad, didn't it? So they have to be taught to validate their own feelings. Because if you're not, you're just living in a dream, right?
Right.
You're living in one distracted dream after another. Unless you can zero in on what's going on in this moment, what you're disturbed about, you're just dancing.
You know, and then it just makes me think of like how we get in these loops in life, like, oh, here I am again, going through that
Exactly.
again, and like, oh, this relationship didn't work out, and oh,
Exactly.
I've gained all the weight back again, or whatever it is, because we get in these loops because what you just said, we're not honoring the feelings, we just keep trying to bypass.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So interesting. Yeah, so I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about like kind of what your life coaching entails. I saw on your website that you offer life coaching to people and like some of the experiences maybe you've had someone.
Well, I'm what you call a life coach that's ready for people who are ready to move, ready to really do things. I did life coaching for many years, and I would have people come in, they want to just tell me stories. You know what I mean by stories. You just tell me this happened and that happened, and I can listen to that for so long. I want to move that. I want to create a different way of looking at it. And so when I have my clients now, they're all people who are really committed to self-awareness. They're really committed to allowing themselves to see things differently.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes courage. You can't be a scaredy cat and face some of those things that you're feeling and believing and see it for what it is.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think like what you're saying is like most therapy, or a lot of times even with friendships, they're like, well, he did this and then he did that and she said this. So it's never about like taking responsibility for, well, how did I attract that? And what am I doing in this situation? Again, right? It keeps happening.
Well, that's another thing I want to say about the Ho'oponopono. The Ho'oponopono, one of the things about the philosophy of it is that they say take 100% responsibility for everything in your life. So when they told me that, I mean, this is like 10, 12 years ago, I was like, take 100% responsibility for everything in my life. You know, nobody's used to that. We are so used to blaming things for things that are wrong out there. If it just didn't happen out there, if he had just done this, if I had just done that, but we have to take responsibility, not blame, but responsibility. You know, when you take responsibility, you see how things happen, but you're not wrong. Mm-hmm. Blame is, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't be like that. But when you take responsibility, you can say, okay, I'm feeling this way now. And I had something to do with what's going on in the world right now. I'm here, I'm part of this consciousness. I'm part of this collective madness that's going on right now. Let me take my responsibility for it. You know, and it really changes your relationship with the world because there's no longer any contention out there. Everything is fine. It's me that I have to work on.
Yeah.
And it's good work, by the way. Working on yourself is good work. It's lifelong lessons. You never get rid of learning about yourself.
It's so true. And I mean, right now, especially with the climate in the US, well, the world, and
Yeah.
like everybody like dividing and on every topic imaginable. The latest is like a mask versus no mask, and like two sides to everything or 10 sides to everything. And so like it's really easy to get caught up in a lot of
It
this and
is.
start like judging people
Yeah,
so
they're
much.
wrong. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, like, oh, they're just uneducated, but I don't think
Yes.
that helps anything.
Yeah. But when we see whatever we see out there in the world, we're in resistance to. That's just a part of ourselves that we don't want to be aware of, or they want to disown.
Yeah.
You know,
So
a lot of people now, and I'm not political, but I'm going to say something political. A lot of people are very angry at the politics in this country right now.
mhm.
And they have personal feelings about Donald Trump, who's our president currently. They have personal, intense feelings about it. So, you know, I tell everybody that whatever you're not liking about him, it's just part of you that you're disowning. And if you're willing to see that, Donald Trump is just fine. He's just who he is. He's not your problem. You don't have to bear him because he's part of you too.
right.
And I think that's the most miraculous thing about Ho'oponopono. It expands your awareness. There is nothing else besides me. I'm the creator. I'm the one that's interpreting all this. And I have to take responsibility for that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, and I've heard this said that everything is you pushed out. So basically you're just looking at a mirror,
I like that.
and it sounds kind of like woo woo, but like when you think about it, like we are, you know, you talked about The Secret, like that's old stuff, but it's still effective. And like everything that we experience is what we've somehow attracted,
Yes.
including our president. And
Absolutely. Absolutely.
like how, and also I think like taking ownership can just be like taking ownership of like we're just constantly judging. Like,
Yes.
I know what
Yes.
it's like to
Yes.
be
Yes.
in the president's shoes. Like that's got to be the hardest job on the planet.
It's got to be. And you know what? No matter if he's good at his job or bad at his job, he's a human being. And he may be narcissistic. He may be all these kinds of things, but it doesn't matter. He's us too.
Mhm.
I'm a little narcissistic. Maybe you're a little narcissistic. I don't know. But we sure see it out of there in him, don't we? We sure see it out there in him. So if it's out there in him, then how could we be aware of it if it wasn't in us at some level?
Exactly. Yeah. Wow. I mean, there's just so much on that. But like speaking of like how all the stuff going on the planet. So I've been doing that where I just keep I call it staying in your lane. Like I just keep staying in my lane versus like trying to tell other people how to think. Like even this bombardment of people sending you 10,000 videos. Now watch this one. Now watch that one. And no,
Yeah, I know.
he says that. And then by the end, you're just like, I don't even know anymore. But I'm like, well, if I stay in my own lane and I do my meditation and I stay in this heart
There
portal,
you go.
this will tell me everything I need to know.
It will.
And so that's why I love what you're teaching and I love these practices, because in the end, that's the only thing you can trust. I can't trust anything that someone says to me, but I can trust this.
Yeah, you
know?
can. But you trust your heart, and that's beautiful. But most people don't trust this.
Yeah.
They don't trust it. But they believe their emotions. You know, they believe them. And they find lots of stories to tell themselves about what they're feeling, except for they're not really able to define what they're feeling. So it's a you know, my coaching practice is a dismantling or unwinding of what's the truth. I want to tell you one more thing. The SoulTranSync practice runs in two parallel universes. We have the Ho'oponopono, which is the relationship we have with ourselves. And then I teach non-duality through self-inquiry, which is the awareness of the truth of who we really are. You know, Ho'oponopono does that too, but Ho'oponopono deals with our humanness. On the other track, we're just being aware of the truth of who we are all the time. So whenever we do find ourselves being caught up in whatever's out there, we realize that can't be true, because we're the truth. We're the truth, we're the light, we're conscious awareness. We're not a personality. We're not our judgments that we have in our mind. We're divine beings. And my meditations are all about being aware that the truth of who you are and the relationship you have with your own heart. at the same, in the same time, because they allow you to really work on your self-awareness.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. That's such a great place to start. So, I want to ask you a few more questions, but before I do, like so let's just say someone's listening to this and they're like, well, I want more of what he's talking about. Like, I want to get there. So what do you recommend as a place to start? Because I know you do have 7 different meditations plus a lot of other things that you offer.
Well, I also have a book coming out in
I
January.
know. That's exciting.
I'm excited about that too. The book is called Uncovering and Embracing Soul Power.
Yeah.
And it incorporates the tools that I use and I teach, but it also is my own personal story is wound into the book. So it really talks a lot about what I had to transcend myself, what I had to re-examine in the stories that I was telling myself. There was a time when I could only describe my mother as a narcissistic bitch. That's who she was to me. That's all I saw her as. In my evolution, in my healing, I had the best mother in the world for me. And she brought me nothing but blessings. And that awareness is from caring for my own heart and seeing her differently and allowing her to be a human too.
Yeah.
And it was, the work that we have to do is all in our own heart, but it really allows us the space to see things differently, to love differently. And that's what I'm really into, giving people the space to learn to love themselves and the world differently.
I think that parental healing is one of the most important work you can do, because if you're judging your parents, you're judging yourself. Because think about it, when we're children, all we do is look at our parents as these idols, and whatever they say, we do, because that's all we know. And so, like, if we sit there in our adulthood saying, well, that sucked, like, then we're saying we suck, because, so healing that. And I did the same thing where you get into their world. What was it like to be my mother?
Yeah.
On one income and like blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that would have been so hard.
It was difficult.
So, I love that. You're just getting into someone else's world, and instead of in your own world and judging from your side.
Yes. So that's what helped me a lot. Learning to be self-aware had the greatest impact on my healing on many levels.
And is that what your book talks about?
Yes. And that's what my practice talks about. And that's what my coaching talks about.
Yeah.
Let's find out what's going on. Let's find out what we're believing. Let's be aware of it. It's just a belief. It's not true. That's the cool part, by the way, because most people believe things are true.
Yeah.
And you've got to start giving people another way of looking at it, that maybe it's not true. Maybe it really isn't what I thought it was.
Exactly. Have you heard of Byron Katie?
I love Byron Katie.
Of course.
Yeah, so, she does the work. I love Byron Katie.
Her whole work is based on, is it true? Do you
is it true?
Know that it's true? And then how do you act when you think that it's true? And it's like,
exactly.
Oh, hard.
And wait a minute, what would your life be like if you didn't believe that thought?
Yeah. Can you think of any good reason to keep that thought? And you're like, any non-stressful reason? And I'm like, no. I love this question. So basically what you're talking about is questioning yourself and your reality. And like changing your reality through questioning. It's my favorite thing. I love that. So what brings you the most joy?
I was going to say my children, but they get on my nerves sometimes. You know what I really love? I love doing group events, because it seems to be group healings. When somebody in a group event is able to express their heart and their challenges, the empathy from the rest of the people in the room allows them to be able to relate to that and heal something inside themselves also. And when you can do a group event and you can point people to seeing things in a different way, it's not just about the healing for them, it's the whole room is healed. And I love the miracle of a room healing.
Yeah.
I love that.
I think that has to do with heart coherence, don't you? Like the fact that you're in an energetic space together with your heart.
Yes, yes.
Because we read energy with our hearts, and we're telepathic, and like it's like you don't have to say a word, and like you said, you see someone experiencing something, and your energy just shifts.
Well, the best coaches, and I think I'm pretty good, don't have to deal with all of your stories. They can deal with your pain. They can deal with your hurt. They can allow you to see it differently and express yourselves. And you know, you gotta express it. You gotta, if you don't express it, it stays in your body.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's gonna continue to pop up and pop out. But if you express it, there's an opportunity for it to keep moving.
And that's, I think that's the best, like people talking now about like, how do I stay healthy? That's the best way to stay healthy, is to address it.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. That's awesome. And is there something that you changed in your life to get where you are now? Like what did you, I know you talked a little bit about it, but like what
I stopped telling myself terrorizing stories about myself to me. That sounds weird. I stopped telling myself terrorizing stories about me.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I had a friend about 10 years ago. And by the way, I've had a fabulous life. I have beautiful kids. I've lived a good life, and I've had beautiful opportunities, but I was a wounded person and I didn't appreciate any of it. Any of it. It all seemed to be too much for me. Now I see my life as this fabulous life, and look how lucky I am. But then it was just on me. And I was at a friend's house and we were talking, and I was saying something very self-deprecating about myself to them. And then he said to me, "Stop doing that." I'm like, "What?" He said, "Stop doing that. Why are you saying," he says, "you are successful, you're accomplished. How can you still continue to tell yourself these stories of inadequacy about you? Why do you do that?" And he made me feel stupid, because I felt like, why do I do that? Why, and then I had to explore why I did it. And I realized a lot of it is, as I said before, habit, just bad habit.
Yeah. It's just what you've always done.
Yeah. And bad habits give us some level of comfort. We're used to them. We understand they make sense to us. Although they're nonsense, they make sense to us. So sometimes you can just put an awareness on anything will allow you to change your mind about a bad habit.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the biggest ones to change.
Yeah.
Is there something that you're still working on perfecting about yourself?
You know what? I study self-awareness, and I often have to become aware of what I'm in resistance to, because it's not the state that's wrong. I could be feeling down or anxious. That's not wrong. It's the judgment I have about being down or anxious that causes me to suffer. So what I'm doing is, whenever I'm feeling things that are may feel uncomfortable, I'm becoming very aware of the story I'm telling myself about that feeling, and realizing that much of what I'm clinging to is a judgment of that state, not the state. The state is what it is. The state is truth, but it's my resistance to it and my wanting it to be different than what it is what's causing me to feel stuck and to suffer.
Boy, that's a big one right there.
Yeah, it is. That's a lifelong lesson. Yeah, that's a lifelong process.
Okay, so as an example, like I can say I've done this a lot, and I know a lot of people I know have done it. Like, so you have this thought like, oh God, I feel depressed, or I feel really lonely today.
Yes,
so
yes.
Instead of feeling it, you either go to the cupboard or the fridge to get something to eat, or you turn on the TV, right?
Yes,
like
distraction.
Or you pick up your phone. So yeah. What do we do instead?
You know what the best thing to do is take a moment and breathe. Breathing is a very cool way to change your energy. So you have to take a moment. Let me show you how I do it. Whenever I'm feeling the energies of wanting to distract myself or wanting to somehow deal with a certain energy, I just get myself peaceful. I know how to go into theta, but you don't have to go into theta. I just go into a space and take a deep breath. Deep breaths, starting with 3, 2, 1, 0. 0 is open. 0 is spacious. There's nothing in 0. So you take about 4 or 5 of those, inhaling and exhaling to 0. It allows you to move things. It allows you to move energies that you might have been stuck in. And you do it until you feel the energy move. Sometimes you do it for 5 minutes. Sometimes you do it twice and you've moved through something.
I love that. That's so much easier.
It is.
You don't even have to move.
You don't need another story. You just need to center yourself and breathe. Yeah.
That's it. You don't have to move anything. Just breathe.
Yeah.
And I hear that all the time about breathing, but I like the 3-2-1-0, especially the zero, because
Yeah,
that
the zero is perfect.
quantum meditation where you're just out in the zero.
Yes.
You know. Oh boy, there's so much. I mean, what we're talking about, like I know you know, like there's so much to unpack in all this, but I'm glad we're at least covering a lot of the basics. What's your favorite healthy food or supplement?
I love greens. I just had, right before our session, I had a big green smoothie with kale and spinach and ginger and turmeric. Somehow it makes me feel like I've done something good to my body.
It does.
And I like a little protein in there too. So I give myself a lot of nutrition. And when I give myself nutrition, I feel like I'm doing something kind to myself.
Isn't that
It doesn't always taste good, by the way.
Because a lot of people think that being like, oh, I'm going to give myself a treat. I'm going to have a pizza or an ice cream, but you're saying the opposite.
Well, you know, it's always point of view. My wife wonders why it makes me happy to drink that crap. She says, what are you doing? She says, I don't even want to taste it. So.
Oh, well, I love that kind of stuff. So you're talking to the right person. And what do you do on I guess I know the answer, but maybe you'll come up with something else. What do you do on a regular basis that you can't live without?
Meditation. Mm-hmm. For me, yes.
It's like
I only believe in meditation. Everything else in the world to me is just a story. Meditation is the truth to me.
Mm-hmm. How long do you meditate every day?
I can meditate a couple times a day, but 20 minutes, 30 minutes. On Sunday, I meditate for an hour because I do work. You know, when you know there are, not work, I shouldn't call it work. Into the deep, there are all kinds of things you can do, by the way, but that takes training and stuff like that. But when I do an hour meditation on Sunday, you know, I do my Ho'oponopono work, I do I am work, I do energy work, I breathe, I do breath work, and a lot of it's just creating space for me. When I meditate for an hour on a Sunday, I can feel like I'm having psychedelic experiences. It's beautiful. Do
you do that guided or do you do that?
I do it not guided, but I do use isochronic and binaural brainwave when I do it because it takes me quickly into theta.
Yeah, that's what I like about that. Yeah. Oh, awesome. And so like you said, 20 minutes like most days. So do you have, because I know a lot of people are like, I don't, like immediately I'm hearing people think, I don't have the time. So what do you think? Like, what do you recommend?
You know what, can I tell you something that's a beautiful exercise to do? And I recommend it to everybody that says they can't meditate. When they take a shower every day, don't they?
Hopefully.
In the shower, if you can allow the hot water to run on your neck and back and just sit there and let that hot water run in your neck and back, you will very quickly go into a theta state. And in that state, you can do your prayers, you can do your Ho'oponopono, you could just be there and be present with that water, warm water running down your neck and back and feeling that spaciousness. I think that's a beautiful thing to do. And you can always remember that moment of feeling open and spacious with that water running, warm water running down your back and neck. But it always has to be the lower back, upper neck, lower back, middle back area. Just let the hot water run on it.
Okay.
And that is a beautiful way to meditate every day. It just takes another 5 minutes.
I love the sound of that. Have you heard of reality transurfing?
No.
I'm just throwing that out there. Okay, so it's this Russian guy who wrote this book called Reality Transurfing. And basically he talks about right where you're talking about on the upper back, that hump there. Yes. He calls it a plait, like a braid basically, but this thing that as you're manifesting, like right when you're falling asleep, you see that thing rise and then you imagine that thing that you're hoping will or wanting to happen has happened. So I just think it's interesting that you talk
that's interesting. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, so it's I was calling that a theta. I really do believe as though you go into a theta state very quickly in the shower.
Mm-hmm. I can see that because you don't have a phone. You
don't have a phone.
Who to talk to.
You're by yourself. Exactly.
Here's a funny thing. I'm sure you've experienced this. Like you're with friends and you're like having a dinner party, or you're even with one friend and you're talking, but then you excuse yourself to use the bathroom. While you're in the bathroom, you come out, you're like, oh my God, I just had this amazing like insight or idea. Like in that 5 minutes that you're in there or less, like that alone time when there's nothing.
It's a rebooting, right?
If you reboot.
Yeah, you reboot.
And so I love the shower thing because it's the same thing.
You know what I want to say to you and a lot of the listeners is that 2020 is a reboot year.
Exactly.
Let this be a reboot year.
You know, can we just talk a second about feeling guilty about this year? Because that's come up for me a lot. Like, I mean, I'm still working and doing a lot of stuff on my computer, but there's a part of me that feels like guilty for not like being out in the world as much and making friends and doing all the, you know, the stuff that I like to do. And it's like, why can't I just let myself have this year? Like,
yes.
Can we talk about that for a minute?
But you know what the most powerful thing you did is? You were aware that you feel guilty about it. Mm-hmm. And just be aware of that. There's some guilt that happens. Mm-hmm. It's something that comes up, a thought or of energy. It's not true. It's not real. This is your reboot year. And you get as much done as you can or not.
So let's just give ourselves permission, everybody listening and the two of us, to have a reboot year.
Yeah.
I like that. We got a year off, kind of, sort of.
Exactly.
Awesome. Okay, well, we're coming up on the end of our hour, but I'd love for you to share with us, before you share with us, like how everybody can get a hold of you. What's one thing that people can start doing today, like as they're listening, right, when this ends, that can be something like an actionable thing to start changing?
I like the shower idea.
Yeah,
I think that everybody showers. I think it's a moment you can spend with yourself, and it starts to give you a feeling of what's the truth. The truth is that it's just the self anyway. It's just conscious awareness. And you can start, in that 5 minutes, you can start be aware of your sensations, being aware of spaciousness. It's a very, very productive time, that few minutes in the shower. So I recommend just starting there.
Okay.
There's a reboot in the shower. You're able to, you can go into the shower in one energy, emotional energy, and come out in another. So yeah, I think that taking that moment, if you can't meditate, then give it to yourself underwater.
Yeah, I love that. And you can do an evening shower right before bed, which I like to do. And that's a perfect way to get into that space of sleeping well too.
Yes.
Eating off the day. So I love that. And if it's someone that's listening that's like, oh, I shower every day, like maybe start adding in just a quick 5-minute shower in the evening as your way to like wash.
Yeah, I love that. That's a very good approach. I like that very much.
Awesome. Okay, so let's see. So how does everybody find your stuff?
Okay, well, I'm on Facebook, SoulTranSync at Facebook, Instagram, SoulTranSync@gmail.com is an email address I can always be reached at. My book is coming out. I want everybody to buy my book because I think it's a very transformative book. I think it deals with the truth, which is self-love. The book is about self-love. I think this day and this year, we need to really be putting a lot of attention on how we care for ourselves. I think it's very important. I think we've been spending so much time looking at the problems and what we don't like and what we don't want and what we're afraid of. And I'm talking about the whole country is kind of dealing with it. The whole world may be dealing with that right now. So, you know, if we can take a moment and allow ourselves to be aware of what we've been experiencing this year and how disruptive it feels, without a story, but just how it feels, it allows us to move through this year in grace and see the opportunities. And I tell other people that, you know, you got to get back in your body too. You look like you're fit. Most people are sitting at home watching TV, you know. You got to move. If it's not a walk, if it's not laying on the floor stretching, if it's not Pilates, if it's not yoga, if it's not a meditation, a massage once a week, you've got to get back into your body.
Yep. I agree. And so I saw on your website that we can pre-order the book.
Yes.
So we're going to recommend that. And are you going to have an audiobook as well?
Yes.
Awesome.
That's what we'll be working on between now and January.
Okay, great. So that'll be available. And then I'll put all these links in the show notes. So the website is SoulTranSync.com.
Correct.
Awesome. Well, Edward, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed. You're delightful.
Oh, thank you. So are you. Well, enjoy Florida.
Oh, and, yeah. Well, I'm looking outside now, and it's not much to enjoy. It's raining torrentially now.
Oh,
That's
boy.
Florida.
Yeah. Okay, well, good luck with everything.
All
And
right, thank you. I
okay,
appreciate
bye.
it.